Today we're going to talk about Howl's Moving Castle. It came out in 2005 after the big hit Spirited Away, the highest grossing movie ever in Japan. And then Howl Moving Castle came out right afterward. Originally, he wasn't even going to direct it, and then he decided to direct it. We're going to get into all the fun stuff here. We got Kyle and John who also watched it. It's going to be amazing.
Everyone, welcome back to AsArt with Nick, John, and Kyle. This is my first time viewing Howl's Moving Castle.
John, this is your first time viewing it. I just want to give you a couple of fun facts before you tell us your first experience, but this movie is still the highest opening weekend movie in Japan. It beat out Spirited Away and other movies, and it makes sense though, right? Because the highest gross movie in Japan ever was Spirited Away, right? And it still holds that record. So this one had the highest opening weekend. So everyone was probably like, let's get there. It's Miyazaki. This is going to be amazing. And they went there and the opening weekend was huge. Didn't make as much as Spirited Away. I don't think it won any awards like Spirited Away did and stuff. But Christian Bale, after watching Spirited Away, he personally, he wanted to be part of the next Studio Ghibli film. And so this is how he got involved. And I know you're like, it was the Batman voice. And I believe it was the Batman voice even before the Batman movies came out.
Right.
So this was his testing for the Batman movies.
You know what? Yeah, I'm like, that's the Batman growl right there.
And then this is also the second time a Batman has voiced a Studio Ghibli movie. Michael Keaton was the other Batman.
Oh, dang.
And I'm not going to spoil it because we're going to be watching movies, so I'm not going to tell you which one he was in. Subscribe. We're going to be covering the Studio Ghibli movies here so you can find out. Okay, John, tell us about your first viewing experience of Howl's Moving Castle.
You know what? It's tricky because we're starting to get into multiple movies that I've seen of their content now. The first movie we watched was just, a month or two ago, was Princess Mononoke, and that was my first Studio Ghibli film. And so I was like, that type of style, that type of story, obviously being in the United States, I'm maybe not used to that type of storytelling. That hit me a lot. And The Spirited Away, of course, being what's considered, I guess, the most successful of those films, was a big one as well. I liked this, but at the same time, I don't feel like it had the same impact on me that those first two did. But it was a complete, I have things that I really liked about it. I have things I didn't like as much about it. And I'll be curious if the things that I wasn't as crazy about are things that you guys share as well. So I'll be curious to hear that.
So Kyle read up on the differences between the book it was made off of and also some history on the movie. So Kyle's going to tell us some amazing stuff right now.
Well, no, so I'm not going to build off fact after fact, but basically just, I did a little research into just kind of what the gist of the books were about. So so Howl's Moving Castle is the first book that's a part of a trilogy called the Land of Ingary trilogy or the Howl trilogy, right? And it's written by Diana Wynne Jones, an English author, right? And the first book is Howl's Moving Castle from 1986, right? Then she, in 1990, published book 2, Castle in the Air, right? And then book 3 in 2008, The House of Many Ways, right? And I believe that's kind of I was kind of seeing similarities from that and Howl's sort of turnstile doorway to go to different parts of the world, right? And then just kind of also understanding the characters a little bit more, and I see it subliminally in the animation, right? So Sophie actually has a secret power, right?
Which isn't really mentioned in the anime.
It is not. No. And she has the ability to speak life into the world. And hence her effect on Calcifer, right? And the castle itself, right? Because by her cleaning and stuff and doing all this stuff, the castle takes on a new look by Howl, changing it. She can also sort of sweet talk Calcifer into doing something, what he thinks is beyond him, right? And it's really interesting because, I was thinking about it too. And the ability to speak life into the world, that's essentially, in a Judeo-Christian sense, the power of God, right? To speak something into existence.
Yeah.
So she has the power of creation, essentially, which is pretty nuts. So.
And a fun fact, the director Miyazaki traveled out of Japan to meet with the director to watch a private screening of the movie with her. And
Oh wow.
after the movie, and she also was a part. She would come into the studio every so often to check in on the process. She was happy it wasn't an exact copy of the book. She was happy someone else
Right.
was doing something else with it, which
Yeah.
is super cool to hear. Because some people are like, no, it has to be just like the book. It has to be like this. She was like, yeah, it's great. Do that. Like, I want a different story, but kind of in the same universe with the same powers and stuff. So she was all for
Yeah.
it. She was super stoked, and she loved checking in and seeing the artwork and stuff like that, which I thought was just such a cool
Yeah, that's
little
cool.
story.
To enjoy. And they're both of them slightly different, but full of fabulous things. And I would like everyone to enjoy it and laugh and sort of rejoice about it, really, because it's a wonderful thing.
It's neat when authors are like that. You hear all over the place, like J.R.R. Martin with Game of Thrones. He's like, yeah, cool, you're changing things, that's fine. The guy who wrote all the Witcher books, he disowned the games and the Polish TV show. He said, they're no good.
Wow.
He said, I consider them fan fiction. They're not even my real stuff. Whereas the guy who made the Metro books, which are Russian books, when they made the games, he's like, yeah, great. Like, you're making me money and extending my reach of my type of source. But some people aren't like that. So it's really cool that.
So something I left out, John, from our Spirited Away video. So, I mean, we talked about how it was nominated for a Academy Award and all that stuff, but I left out a part because I knew we were watching this movie next. He did not show up to receive the award because he was really against the protest. I mean, he was protesting the Iraq War, so he really didn't want anything to do with it. And he was just like, I'm not even going to show up. So he was just like over it. And then because nothing really came of that or whatever, his next movie, he wrote this story first before he directed it, and he wrote it as it's kind of like an anti-war movie, and there's a lot of themes like the bombing, and America was doing a lot of bombing. And then like one of the things too that I thought was interesting that I read too, so the president of the country is supposed to be like George Bush, like very stupid and ignorant, like, hey, what's going on, like loud and obnoxious and stuff like that. And then the lady, Madame, I can't remember the leader of the wizards or whatever, but she's supposed to be like a Dick Cheney, or like the right hand man who's really like doing all the work or something like that. Like, that's what I read in the article. So it was like this whole idea.
I can see
and
that.
then
For sure.
also the whole idea too, where it was like, we have to stop this mindless sense of war. Like the whole, remember how like Howl's very concerned about the bombs, like they're just bombing every night, and I'm Batman, and I have to stop it. He goes out as the Cape Crusader, and he goes out there to save everyone.
And Nick, the sorceress lady's name is Madame Suleiman.
I was close.
Yes.
Is it Suleiman?
Yeah, Suliman.
Okay, that's different, because there's a very famous
Suleiman
figure in history that's Suleiman, the last name, but it's in different. Yeah.
And it's cool too, because even with the flag, it's basically the American flag with the stripes, but there's a cross there instead of the stars. So he's just like really pushing into this, and he's like, he was very vocal about it too. He's not trying to be subtle or anything. He was like, this is an anti-war movie, as long as with a fantasy aspect with love involved.
There in quite a few Miyazaki movies, there are anti-war elements in them, especially with like Miyazaki. I mean, Nausicaa of the Wind in the Valley of the Wind, right?
We talked too much about the English voice actors yet, but we did talk about Christian Bale, and I for a short bit I didn't realize it was Christian Bale, and then he started mumbling. I was like, oh my god, it's Batman. So I stopped the movie and I texted Nick when he goes, I'm going to be following behind you. I'll be in disguise. I'm like, yeah, as Batman. Like, I just could not. I was like, oh my gosh. But when he's grumbling, I'm like, it sounds just like that. And I was like, oh my gosh, it was so there. But I'd say by far, Billy Bob Thornton and Princess Mononoke, by far my favorite. And this one, Billy Crystal, by far my favorite. Like, Billy Crystal was just perfect in this, man. He was so fun. And there was a lot of other really good, voice actors and actresses in this as well. But it's funny, Billy Bob Thornton, when you hear his voice, right away. When you hear Billy Crystal's, you know it just as quick, if not quicker. I mean, there's some very, very recognizable voices,
And then when I was watching this, I was like, this has to be the funniest Miyazaki movie. like when it comes to like comedy and like, timing and like how long the jokes go on for. Cause like, you kind of get funny moments in other movies, but it's kind of like, ooh, he's stinky, ring, like it's like exaggerated through motion, and smack, they'll hit a wall during a chase scene. It'll be like comedy like that, but not like comedic timing. I've never really noticed until this last screening, but I'm like, man, there's so many good, like for example, the dog, right? She thinks the dog is Howl. And they're like walking, and she's like talking to the dog, like, Howl, what are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. And then finally they get there and you see it's not Howl. And she's like, oh man, I've been telling all my secrets to this dog who's like part of the enemy, It's like a gotcha moment. But it was so good. Like, that was good. The whole when he dyes his hair and he comes out and he has like an emotional breakdown. Like
he's all slime. He's like slime. He's like, ugh, disgusting.
Like very funny comedy beats. And I thought Sophie was so funny. There's some things she said that was just like hilarious. Like, oh, you better get anything out of your room before I clean it. He's like, oh crap, hold on, wait. I'm going to my room. Just like so many good little timing beats.
And that's I think I like the idea that some people just have old souls, and hers is she leans right into being an old woman. She's like, it's fine. I'm still not that old. And it's like a lot of that was really, really fun. She kind of had that temperament before she was even change. She's like, I'm gonna finish this up, you girls go ahead. It was just kind of funny to see that whole idea, because you definitely meet people in your life that are like that. They act older than they really are, so.
One thing that's interesting in the book is that Sophie's transformation as the old lady actually allows her to be more assertive. And just like, because she doesn't care what other people think anymore, because she's an old lady, like, she's her looks are gone now, and she's like, I'm gonna do what I want,
She's also very positive too. When all that happens to her, like she has a slight freak out moment, but she's like, oh, I guess this is my life. I'm gonna go out on my own. It's like, whoa, dude, she's so positive. You would think like even like a normal human being would have a breakdown if they woke up and they couldn't get out of bed because of their age. Like it's like this extreme pain they never felt. And she's that hunched over. Like she's like so hunched over. Like
also,
she's like so old.
her mom, Sophie's mom, is like a sociopath. Like like she comes to visit her and she's like, oh my god, I got married, and it's like, you can come and live with us even though you're old, and just like, and then like, basically Sophie's like, no, I'm cool being here. She's like, okay, well, bye. It's like, I don't know. It's just crazy, man. Her mom.
I thought the mom
poor girl
storyline was going to circle back. I thought that was going to circle back, and after she visited her, that never came back around. Right? It was like that was kind of a weird.
And she was
maybe that's more of a book thing. Maybe. I don't know.
She was, and also let's remember she was also under Madame Solomon, right? She was spying for her. Right. So. Yeah.
So one thing I was going to talk about some of the things that I'd mentioned at the beginning, some of the things that I didn't hit me that well in this movie that kind of bothered me. And one thing is like when the stakes are high, you want to see it on the characters' faces. And whenever the situation seemed dire, Mr. Christian Bale was still smiling, and I don't know if that's like a mask, he has kind of a mask of his emotions, like that's what's left over of his magic and sorcery or whatever, but it just seemed like whenever she was like, oh my god, things are bad, he's just smiling. He's like, no worries, come on, I'm Batman, Batarang. It's like I couldn't get concerned about the characters when he was just smiling the whole time. I don't know, did that bother you guys or not really?
It didn't, just because he's kind of like this Prince Charming sorcerer kind of guy, right? Wizard. And it worked, and also having like read up a little bit on the book, Howl is fiercely independent, right? And he doesn't want to be caged by like institutions or like rules of like society and stuff like that, right? Hence why his castle is always on the move. And I think that like he's happiest when he is enacting his own his own destiny, right? And that's kind of the juxtaposition to Sophie at the beginning of the story, where she's very much sort of ensconced in her duty and obligation as the oldest sister of the family, right? So like I that smile that I see that is always plastered on Howl's face is kind of like reminding me of his carefree sort of spirit, I think.
By the way, so originally that castle wasn't even designed for this movie. before this movie came out, there was a museum for Studio Ghibli, and he had to just decide. He designed something to just fill up a space. So he designed this castle, and then the producer, when they decided to take on this movie and stuff, he's like, just use that castle. He's like, yeah, I guess I'll just use that castle, but I have to add legs, and that's when he added the chicken legs to it.
It does not look like it fits the rest of the story perfectly. I mean, it does look a bit out of place, but I like it. It's like, well, you don't see this every day, so it makes sense that it looks different. But yeah, it's kind of cool. They drew from something that wasn't even meant to be in the film.
Amazing.
It's supposed to look different than the rest of the houses, but it just happens to work that way, which is very interesting.
And then we got to end this by talking about the soundtrack. This is probably one of my favorite Studio Ghibli soundtracks.
It is really
scores. Good. It's just so the main theme is just one of my favorite. When you hear it just with the piano, and then you hear it like orchestrated and everything. I love the main theme of this so much. It's so good. It's so good. Oh my gosh.
Nick knows I'm huge into scores and soundtracks. So I think the first thing after I watch it, he goes, so what do you think of the music? I'm like, I didn't get to watch this one as loud as I did the other one. So I didn't take it. I couldn't hum a single theme for you this time, even though it's probably really good music. So probably what I need to do is revisit the soundtrack if it's on like Spotify or something like that.
So in terms of the music, I really liked it just because it also fits the sort of time period that I feel that the film is emulating. Like I do get a sort of like, it's not as powerful as Wagner, right? It's not like that, like crescendo stuff, but it still makes me think that it's like late 19th century kind of deal, right? And it's like really I like that kind of stuff, that orchestral arrangement. So
and some of the music when it gets dark, it's like dark music too. Like especially when the spells are being cast and like those weird shadows pop up.
Oh my god. Yeah. Yeah, that almost gave me nightmares. The Star Children dancing around Howl, and when the
You know what, guys? We're gonna stop it there because we're gonna go a little bit longer on a podcast right now. So come on over to the AsArt podcast on Spotify and Apple. We're gonna have so much fun talking there. I have some other fun facts we're gonna talk about, and we're gonna go a little bit more deeper into some topics. But thank you so much for joining us here, and let us know what Miyazaki films you would like us to cover next. We kind of have a rough idea which ones we want to cover, but Kyle has not seen Castle in the Sky. And I was like, what? You haven't seen Castle in the Sky, dude? And you play Minecraft, dude? How dare you play Minecraft and you haven't even watched Castle in the Sky, dude?
You know what? I'll revoke my Minecraft license. I'll leave,
Guys, thank you for watching. If you're trying to find your way to the podcast or any of the other content we have, navigate on the interwebs in your browser to asart.space, and then I'll pull up all the links for easy weasy access. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you on the next AsArt. Housework.